So BIOS settings. Perhaps you've been afraid of BIOS. You know, it's a little bit of a scary thing to go in there, change something. What if you brick something up? Will this brick up your PC? Well, there are 6 settings that you need to know how to change in BIOS, especially if you're a creator. So I'm going to share these 6 tips with you, and I'm going to show you actually how to do it and how to, configure them as well. My favorite is tip number 5, but let's show you them all. Licensing Windows is cheap and easy with whokeys.com, and if you use the code TN20, you get an extra discount. Complete the purchase, copy the key, and paste it to the activation settings. And you're all done. Also, check out their Microsoft Office 19 license and use the same code TN20 for the extra discount. Check out whokeys.com in the video description below. You've got your PC, the PC is running. One of the first things you need to know is how to get into the BIOS. And that's quite simple. All you have to do is go into the restart the PC. And once you have restarted, just start hitting the delete button and you should be getting into. And that works on Intel, AMD, any of the platforms really. That's like the default. Voila, here we are. Now, I am using a Gigabyte board. This is Z690 Aero D. This is one of the most confusing motherboards and BIOSes that you can get. Gigabyte, we need to sort them out. I think that one of the newer motherboards, they have a little bit of a better kind of a design in there. Asus motherboards are very easy to understand, but the same is with Intel and AMD motherboards. Whether you're running AMD or Intel, both of them work similar, and most of the tips actually work on both of the platforms as well. So it doesn't matter whether you're using Intel or AMD. Tip number 1 is iGPU. And you might have heard that the iGPU gives you lots of performance as a creator. Now you're going onto your task manager on Windows and you don't see Intel UHD 770 or Intel UHD something in there. It's just not there. How do you find the iGPU settings? Now, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load optimize defaults, which means just reset every piece of setting on the BIOS. So whether you're getting this or I'm getting this, it would look the same to you. One of the first things you notice is the fans are absolutely kicking off. It's absolutely insane. How do you find the iGPU setting then? Firstly, most likely, the BIOS has set the iGPU to be off by default. It's because most of the people use these PCs for gaming, and for gaming, the iGPU is not going to be really giving you anything, and you want to use your dedicated graphics. But for creators, that's a whole nother story, and we need that iGPU. But in gaming, there might sometimes be an issue because you start to play on iGPU instead of dedicated GPU and so on. But the interesting thing is even creator boards like this Aero D will have the iGPU set off by default. How is this a creator motherboard? I don't know. And that's not just Gigabyte, that's all the other manufacturers as well. I'm looking at you, Asus, with the Pro ad. Now, firstly, we're gonna go to settings. There we go. And then I believe it's IO ports, and then we have internal graphics. Here we just have to make sure that this is enabled. It was actually enabled for me. So maybe Gigabyte has updated the BIOS and actually has this enabled. But make sure that is enabled as a creator. Then your iGPU will actually show up in Windows. Tip number 2 is XMP settings and lowering the RAM speed. Now, you might have got a really fast RAM kit, like something Corsair, Dominator, Titanium, 8000 megatransfers per second or something like that, and you realize it's not actually running at 8000 megahertz. It's just too much. So what do we actually do? So firstly, we're gonna go to the tweaker here, and as you can see, we have something called extreme memory profile. Whichever RAM you're running, most likely it will have an XMP or DCOP or Expo profile, whether you're on AMD. XMP for Windows, DCOP or Expo for AMD platforms. Now, what we want to do is actually enable it. We're just going to put XMP 1, and you can see that's 5200 megatransfers per second. And that's what we have from the actual manufacturer, coming from the RAM sticks. And we want that. But sometimes the RAM speed is too much and you're getting crashes. So how do you lower the RAM speed? There's something called the system memory multiplier. And on Asus, you'll see like DDR5 speed or something like that. This is the most confusing way to get it. But MSI, ASRock, they're all exactly the same. So now you can see that we can scroll down and you can see our 5200 megatransfers is enabled there. We could set it to 5000, for example, if it's too fast. If it feels like you're getting crashes, I'd recommend going down by 200 megahertz. If you're, let's say, 68,000 megahertz and you realize, whew, I'm getting crashes, try 66, then 64 if you're still getting crashes and so on, until you find actually a good frequency that the IMC can run. It's very important you know how to change these settings. Perhaps later on in your PC's lifetime, when your PC and IMC is not the latest condition or the newest condition, you might actually lose some of the RAM capabilities. You might have to lower the RAM speed. So going lower is very important without actually losing all of the XMP settings. You could take the XMP off, but lowering the RAM is actually still going to give you more performance, but you just lower the RAM speed there. Now, for 5200 megatransfers per second, for me, that's absolutely fine, and I'm going to leave it at that. Now, tip number 3 is the fan profile. You need to know how to change the fan speed in BIOS. And why I recommend doing it in BIOS, not on Windows, is because even if the software doesn't launch or crashes in Windows, BIOS is like a subsystem that still will run the fan speeds at the right speeds. So how do you find the fan, settings in here? The easiest way I can see here is Smart Fan 6, which is F6, as you can see when we can go there. My fans are going very loud, I'm not sure if you can hear them, but you might find them somewhere else as well. Just going through the tabs, you'll find something like that. Different manufacturers might call their fan settings something different, like a Q fan, but we're gonna go to F6, and voila, we have the fan settings. Here's a few things that you can see what you can do and so on, but I have a more detailed video about this where I'm going much more in depth how you can get a better performance and quieter performance and how to actually tune them, and I'll go step by step how to tune this. So I'm not gonna make this video too long in this part of this, but for tip 3, it's important that you know that you can and how to change the fan settings and fan speed in BIOS. That's much more peaceful. Fans are finally quieter. A bonus little tip over here is saving BIOS settings. Now, some people just go out and don't save the settings, but knowing an F10 key, this will basically just save configuration and exit. So we're just gonna do that now. Once you press enter, it's gonna save the BIOS settings, restart the PC, and you're gonna start to go into Windows again. Unless you wanna go back to BIOS, hit that delete button. Now we're back in the BIOS, and as you can see, there is an easy menu here as well, what you can see. And this is where you can actually enable the XMP, and some of the main settings that you need on BIOS are just available in here. As you can see, XMP or Expo, we can see in there. And if you go to advanced menu, that is F2. So if you flick between F2, you can go to the more advanced settings and easy mode. Now, tip number 4 is the MCE or power limits on Intel platform. Now, you might be running Intel's 13th gen, 12th gen, any of the CPUs, and your motherboard most likely is going to run Intel CPU out of its factory specs. Now, is that bad? Not necessarily. What this will give you is it's gonna extract all the juice from the CPU as possible. So when you're doing something like a multi-core rendering, multi-core or multi-threaded workload that's very heavy, the motherboard Z790, Z690 and some of the B660, B760 motherboards are pushing the CPU further than it's actually allowed. So Intel says up to 253 watts, for example, maximum, power draw, but the motherboard is pushing it past 300 watts. Now, you could leave it on, but that will give you a little bit of more performance at much higher power consumption and much louder PC. Now, is it worth it? Well, I'm gonna leave it up to you. But knowing how to change these settings is very important, and I'll show you how to do that. So when we're in this Gigabyte crazy complicated BIOS, we're gonna have to go to F2. One of the first things what you can see is enhanced multi-core performance. And what we have to do here is disable it, because that is basically the multi-core enhancements and PL1 and PL2 limits. That's what this tries to push further. Now, on ASUS motherboards, it's much easier because what you can see there is enforce all limits, which just means that all of the limits that Intel sets, we're going to force these and don't let motherboards do anything else there. In here, what we also see in Gigabyte BIOS is turbo power limits. which is basically another one of those things that it should explain. It should be a little bit better, kind of understand what this means. And as you can see, this is auto Intel POR, which means basically Intel's defaults or enabled. So if we're going to put enabled, it's just going to try to push it a bit further, but we're going to have to set Intel POR, and then let's exit this. And now we shouldn't have any extra power being pulled from the motherboard and the CPU. Well, really only the CPU. We shouldn't have any more power draw from the CPU as Intel lets us do. So here's how we can check that. We go back to the Windows. What you want to do is open something like Hardware Info 64 or XDU from Intel. Both of them will work, and you can check that what the power limits are, what's been pushed by the motherboard. So here, as you can see, we've got the CPU 13700K, and the PL1 power limit and PL2 power limit are 253 watts, which is what Intel has set for them. And we're running Intel stock settings now. So if you go and try to run something like the Cinebench, you'll see that the multi-core performance is not going to go above 253 watts. As you can see here, we're pulling 253 watts. 252 watts, as you can see there. If you've got very good cooling for your PC, just leave them, enhanced, and let's see what the motherboard does. But if you find it a bit too loud, or perhaps you need to limit a little bit of the cooler, or your cooling isn't as good, like even this one here, it's not particularly awesome, I'd probably limit those settings. Now, tip number 5, and this is my favorite one, and this works on all of the Gigabyte Z690 and Z790 motherboards. This is a little bit of a trick that not a lot of people know that you can do. We all know that the 14900K finally runs 6 GHz out of the box, but what if I told you that your 13700K, 13900K, even 14600K, perhaps sometimes, maybe, possibly, and 14700K can run 6 GHz on Gigabyte motherboards, especially this one. I've got a whole dedicated video of this on the channel available, but I'll just show you how to enable it, and basically your CPU can run 6 GHz. If you want to know how much is the difference and will it work, go check out the other video. Here we are in advanced mode, CPU upgrade, and we're gonna press instant 6 GHz, okay? Our power limits are still the same, but a single core power or the speed now can go up to 6 GHz. So we're just gonna press save, and we'll go back to BIOS and see if we can get 6 GHz on this 13700K. And voila, look at that. We've got hardware info open here, and you can see core clock speeds. We've gone max 5.998, so that is 6 GHz on these two cores. What is it? P-Core 5 and P-Core 4. They are the best cores for me, and they go to 5.9. As you can see, actually 6 GHz. I'm gonna leave this open so we can check them a little bit later, because I believe it's gonna hit 6.0 as well, bang on. But now the last tip, and the last tip is updating your BIOS. Now you might think, I don't want to update my BIOS, but there are a few things why you need to update your BIOS, or why you want to update your BIOS, especially if you're going with a new CPU, or if you get new RAM, or you want your RAM to be a bit more stable. Perhaps maybe your current RAM profile is actually getting a bit more crashes or something like that. Updating the BIOS can fix that, or have a little bit more stable settings and things like that in there. How do you even go about updating your BIOS? Now, all you have to do is go to Google and search your motherboard's name. So the motherboard you have. I've got Gigabyte Z690 Aero D, and here is our motherboard page. In here, or in any of the other motherboard manufacturers as well, locate a support tab where we can find something. And underneath here, there might be some CPU manuals and QVL list, memory support list here, for example. All we want to do is find BIOS. On Gigabyte, you have to scroll down a little bit, and there's BIOS in here. Then we scroll back up, and you can see that underneath this BIOS menu, we've got different versions of BIOS. And here's the latest version of the BIOS, which is F28. And all you have to do now is just download this. Hit download, and it's just going to go into your download folder. You can see here, I've already downloaded it. All you have to do is extract all, and then it will extract it in here. And once you've got this open, motherboard BIOS Z690 Aero D, as you can see here, there's only one file that we really need, which is this one here, this F28 file. Or you can see it's the file that has the highest capacity, or the largest file. We're gonna copy that file, and then you need something like this, a USB stick. Stick it in the back of your PC, and we're gonna paste it onto the memory stick. Now we have to restart again and go into the BIOS. Now, before you update your motherboard BIOS, it's very helpful if you saved those BIOS settings, all that you've configured already, into disk or something like that. So in here we can see save profiles. We're going to save this, go to profile 1. We're going to name it TN profile 1. I'm going to press OK. Profile saved. Let's have a look. As you can see, we've got profile there. Okay, once they are saved, and you can actually save them onto your USB stick or something like that. Once your BIOS settings are saved, you can move on, but you can also save your BIOS to USB stick. So that's maybe even better if you want to do that. Okay, I've realized that my memory stick might not be the correct format that's supported in here. So all we have to do now is pick up a different USB stick. I'm going to take a different USB stick. If one USB stick doesn't work for you, you might want to check another USB stick. I'm going to take the same BIOS. As you can see, my second USB stick is FAT32 file system, which means that that's maybe what this BIOS likes. Okay, here we are. If I'm going to go to F8, as you can see, we've got this here now as well. So let me see if I pull this out and just change the different. As you can see, it's got to be FAT32. Well, you can see that here. And now, when you got FAT32, actually, I want to show you something else as well. So when you want to save your profiles, just in case, we're just going to save it also onto the USB stick here. We're going to name it TN BIOS settings. Okay, profile saved. So it's on the memory stick now as well. F8, we're going to go to Q flash, hit enter. And then underneath here, we're going to choose our USB drive. And you can see that this is the file that we want to run. We're going to press enter again. Are you sure you want to update the BIOS? As you can see, or remember, as you remember, ours was F28 and this is F23. So we are updating quite a few BIOSes. We're just going to press OK. And then now it's going to verify the file and then update the BIOS. The very important thing here is to not touch the computer in a way of losing power. So we're just going to press start. Make computer, the system is going to shut down, Q flash will continue after restart. So now the computer is going to do its thing, just leave it be and do not turn on or off the power because that's going to be bad. There we go, we're back online. And as you can hear, our fans are going so loud again. Why? Well, because we updated the BIOS and none of the settings actually changed. So as you can see, our iGPU is still on, so I have to apologize, Gigabyte. You probably have it enabled by default on this creator motherboard, but we're gonna have to go back to the BIOS because all of our profiles and all the things that we just did aren't working anymore. But remember, we saved our settings. That's what we want to load now. Goodness me, these fans ramp up so loud. Voila, look at that, even the design changed now, look at that. I don't even know if we can load the same settings. Look at that. Gigabyte has changed their BIOS. Let me go to... Oh. Now, first thing what I want to do is we're going to go here, load profiles. And as you can see, there is no settings saved. Let's see, save profiles. As you can see, they're all empty as well. Because we updated the BIOS, it wipes all the saved settings there. Good job we put them actually on the motherboard, on the USB stick. As you can see, we are going here, TN BIOS settings, and we're going to press OK. Profile loaded. Can you hear that? Fan profile has come down. Even though our BIOS, what it looks like, has changed, we actually have everything enabled. Let's have a look. Although the XMP profile, as you can see, that is not on. So we're gonna have to check that. If we can put tweaker, CPU upgrade. As you can see, it only updated our fan profile. None of the other bits actually got updated. Instant 6 GHz. Enhanced multi-core performance. I'm gonna leave it on auto just to see what happens. Okay. And extreme memory profile. Yes, we want the XMP1 on, and then we're gonna press F10, save configuration, and yes. Good job that you actually saved your BIOS profile to the motherboard, especially if you've spent ages doing the fan profile. This is an extra tip for you to really keep and remember is when you're doing your fan profile, save the BIOS profile into your memory stick, upload it or save it to your Google Drive or something like that. Because next time you update your BIOS to get a little bit more stable performance or just stable overall performance, all sorts of things, you're actually not gonna just have to do all of that work again, especially if you haven't changed any of the fans or any of the I/O or any of the cooling in your system. Now, hopefully these tips were helpful for you, especially as a creator when BIOS seems to be a little bit scary. Now, if you have any specific questions for me, I'm gonna leave Minnct in the description below. Reach out to me in there. I'll get back to 100% of the messages in there. If you've tried reaching out to me on email or DMs, I probably can't get back to all of the messages in there and your message gets missed, but Minnct always gets priority in my workflow. And if you like to build yourself the best bang for buck creator PC, then there's some build guides in the description below. Go check them out right now, especially because the prices now have fallen a little bit and you can get even more for your money, or the budget is actually cheaper than what you can get in there. Perhaps you can allow yourself some more upgrades. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.